Welcome back, Mindset fam, and thank you for tuning into another episode of the Mindset Podcast. We have with us Brittnie Bassant, the president and CEO of Chamber South. I'm sure that's just one of the many hats that you wear with your position, but we are very excited to have you on. Welcome to the show, Brittnie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here with you guys today.
Awesome. Yeah, we can't wait. This is going to be a good one. I can already feel it. And as per usual mindset fashion, we're gonna put you through our two warm up questions, and I'm really excited about this one because this one is one that we haven't asked too many people, and it's something that I think is very interesting, and that one is if there was any scientific discovery imaginable, if you had to pick one, what would you think would be the most appropriate or something that would, kind of represent you in the best way and that you think is most interesting?
That's a thinker of a question, isn't it? And something that would represent me. I don't know how much. I mean, a lot of people that know me know that I'm big on conservation in two different aspects, two different fronts: environmental conservation and animal conservation. So I think when you look at scientific discoveries, really just kind of like staying at home and on our planet. What is it? 95% of our oceans are unmapped or unexplored. And so just really kind of curious to know what's going on down there. And the more information I think that we can learn about what's happening, beneath the surface, and it covers like 70. Now I'm like just throwing out random numbers, but isn't it like our planet is covered by water and so much of it is unexplored, and we really just don't know what's kind of like in those depths. And it's always fascinated me. And you see a lot of like the sci-fi stuff and what people think are is down there, but I'm big on facts and data and science. So I would like to know in actuality, like what our ocean holds, because there's so much that's left undiscovered and unexplored.
Brittnie, what do you? That's fascinating, and I love this question, this topic, because I heard I forgot who it was, but I am kind of paraphrasing here. I didn't come up with this on my own, but this gentleman who's like very into science, maybe he was even an astronaut or something of that sort, like all in. He was mentioning that it's kind of crazy how us as the human population, we're going out and we're exploring the moon and different planets, and we're so eager to learn about Mars and all these different the galaxy and all these different things that are so far away from us and seem so crazy. And he's on knocking it, but he's saying, hey guys, there, like, to your point, Brittany, there's a lot in on Earth right here that we still have not discovered, that human traces have never been anywhere near it. So it's interesting. He's like, okay, that's great, the moon, space, that's excellent, but also remember that we have so much here in Earth to discover. What are your thoughts on that?
And I think, and now I hope I'm not giving false information, but it's okay, because no matter what you say, whether you say that it's 100% fact or not, someone's always going to fact check you, right? So by all means, fact check me. But I think we've explored more of outer space, or we know
Mhm,
more about outer space than we do
mhm.
at home. And I think
Yeah.
there's a fascination with everything. People are fast. I always say
Mhm,
someone's always going to have a passion for something that you may not have a passion for, and that's great, because collectively, all the bases are covered. But there's this very unique fascination with outer space, and we have this gigantic universe that we can
mhm.
explore. And so, of course, you're going to keep pushing boundaries. But I do think that there's some really exciting and interesting things that can still be discovered here on planet Earth. And whether it teaches us lessons about our past or helps us with the future, all of those things remain to be seen. But there is a lot that we could still learn about planet Earth.
That's amazing. I think to Anthony's point, there's so much still on Earth. And like you mentioned, like 95% of, the Earth's oceans are still not even discovered. And that's something that amazes me, right? Like specifically oceans and what's under, this blue water, this sea that we see. Like that's a whole other world, beyond our imagination. And I think that's so crazy, but it's so interesting. Our next question of our little lightning round here, is a fun one. This is one that I personally love because I'm a very traditional person and I love family traditions. I love holidays. We're getting ready to get into the fall now. Halloween's coming up, Thanksgiving. This is just an awesome time of year. But I want to ask you, Brittnie, what is a family tradition that you love, that you maybe hold near and dear to your heart? and that you just look forward to doing every year with your family?
I am so excited to talk about this, but before I tell you that, and actually to lead into that, you mentioned Halloween. I was born and raised in Trinidad. I didn't move to Miami, Florida until I was 14 years old. So I've never been trick-or-treating, FYI, ever. Like I've dressed up in costumes
What?
and gone to parties and that sort of thing, but I've never gone door to door and be like, give me candy. Never done
Yeah.
it. So I'm really
Never too
excited.
late. It's never
Well,
too late.
so the best way that I'm going to be able to go trick or treating is to like find a little kid and take them trick or treating.
There you
So
go.
if
Yeah.
anybody wants to let me borrow their kid for an evening of trick or treating, I'm happy to do so. But like I mentioned, I was born and raised in Trinidad, and my mom is Muslim, my dad is Hindu, and so that led for me being a very culturally diverse person. And I actually went to Catholic schools my entire life, and they were run by nuns, so I had like half Hindu, half Muslim. And then I went to Catholic schools, so I have a really well-rounded understanding of world religions and cultures and traditions.
Mm.
But my dad's really the practicing one in the family, and he's a practicing Hindu. And so in Hinduism, we have this huge festival. It's called Diwali. It's a festival of lights. I mean, imagine Christmas and New Year's combined, and like throw in 4th of July there too, because it's huge. There's fireworks, there's presents, there's a ton of food. It's the festival of lights. So there is just light everywhere. It's colorful. And that's why one of the reasons that I love Hinduism is because the religion itself and the traditions and the I don't want to say like rituals, but the ceremonies are very colorful. And
Mm.
so Diwali is a festival of lights, and we practiced it. It's a big deal in Trinidad, and a big deal. Like I said, fireworks, you light little dias outside of your house. You have
Mm.
hundreds of these like little tiny clay pots filled with oil and a wick, and you light them and you put them all outside your house, and you make beautiful displays, and you cook a ton of food. You invite everyone over. I mean, it's wonderful. And again, huge deal in Trinidad. When we moved here to Miami, Florida, we didn't necessarily celebrate it at the same level that we celebrated in Trinidad, especially the first few years. We would observe it, we'd recognize it, we do our own little private thing. But whereas Diwali is very forward facing, like it's kind of like you celebrate outside your house, right? You decorate your yard, you decorate the house itself. When we first started celebrating it in the US, we did it very inside the house. It was like a very private thing. And then over the years, the tradition really kind of continued. And when I was in college, my first year of college, I went to UCF, and I was in Orlando, and I made no plans to come back home for Diwali because I didn't think it was important, right? I was like, oh, it's Diwali, it's not like we do like a big deal anymore. And I remember talking to my mom, it was my freshman year of college. I remember talking to my mom on the phone, and she like kind of mentioned that my dad was a little sad that like it was Diwali and the family wasn't together. And it was just like the first Diwali that I wasn't with my family. And I got on a plane. I got on a plane from Orlando. I could have drove, but I got on a plane because I'm dramatic apparently. And I got on a plane and I was like, I have to go home for Diwali. And so I got on a plane and I flew back home for Diwali, and
Yeah.
I got here in time because it's an evening celebration. Because of course it's
Mm.
Festival of Lights. So you do it at nighttime when it's dark. And we had a great Diwali. But then I kind of in my family, and I mean with my dad is really the champion for it, but I encouraged the championing of making Diwali more of an external facing thing for us. So now we do decorate the house. We do have all of the aspects of Diwali like it was in Trinidad. We have transferred those here to the United States, and it's one night a year because I'm big on assimilating, and I'm a big on like, I came to the US, I need to adopt, the cultures and the heritage and traditions here in the US while not forgetting about your own culture and heritage. But it is the one night a year that we all kind of get together as a family, and we remember our roots, remember our tradition, and it's a ton of fun. But it still remains in that regard, it still remains a very personal thing for me. And so there's like been probably less than a handful of people that I've known living here for, the past 20 years in the United States that I've actually invited to spend this holiday with me, apart from my family. So it's a really interesting one. And Diwali is October 24th this year. So it's coming up.
Okay.
So we're
It's
kind of
coming
in the
up.
process of preparing for that and seeing what we're going
Yeah.
to do. So
It's in a few days. So what are you gonna do this year?
the same thing, you dress up in traditional wear, you light the
Yeah.
diyas, there's a fasting component, there's lots of food. I mean, it's like a fun it's a fun, but it's
Nice.
family based. I do spend a lot of
Yeah.
time with my family. Like I said, I very rarely like invite. You have to be part of my inner
Right.
so called to even be in the consideration for that.
Sure.
Um, but it's just a great time that the family gets back
Sure.
together.
That's so awesome, and this is why Gabe and I picked this question, because it's where Gabe and I are also big on tradition, family traditions. For example, in my family, not to that level, Brittany, that you just explained. I feel like that's a big important tradition for you and your family. But we, simple one that I can think off the top of my head is every year we always get a real Christmas tree, and we make sure it's real because we just love. The scent that it gives off, and just the fact that there's a tree in our living room is pretty crazy to think about. But we've been doing it for so many years now that we just it's part of the tradition. So traditions are, I love it because it's like you energize, like you recharge your batteries, and then afterwards, you're back into the real world and into the hustle and bustle. So that was awesome, excellent tradition that you share with us, Brittany. Now getting more into the meat of things, into to the the hard part of this podcast. I'm just kidding. Is you wear many hats, Brittany. You're Chamber South. You're in part of the Zoo Miami board, and you have so many other things. And I see Chamber South. I mean, breakfast, lunch, and dinner on my social media. Gabe, I don't know if you see Chamber South on LinkedIn all the time. Specifically, Brittany. I love it. I'm always staying up. That's how I stay updated here in Gainesville of what's happening in Miami. Because I see Brittany at all these events. Brittany, you might as well just be a reporter or something like that, because you're always giving out so much information of what's happening. I love it. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to this role? Because I'm sure there's some kind of journey. Somebody just doesn't wake up one day and is so incredibly involved and so well connected like you are. So kind of walk us through that journey of how you got to where you are today and how you've been so successful doing that.
Oh, absolutely. So with regards to how I landed here at Chamber South, again, Indian parents, right? So it's going to be a thread throughout this entire conversation. But when you have Indian parents, just as a heads up, for those of you that
Mhm.
do, for those of you that don't, you'll learn a little bit. You don't really have a lot of choice in your career path. You can be like a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, an accountant, or a teacher. Like those are like the career paths that you were offered. Those are the only ones that are, really kind of in their minds, like what you can do. And so I kind of broke the mold with that a little bit. I was supposed to be a lawyer. And I decided my junior year of college that I didn't want to do that. So I moved back to Miami from UCF, from Orlando. And I fell into the lap of a local not-for-profit. And I really do say that I fell into their lap. I was adamant about getting that job because it was 3 miles away from my home in Cutler Bay. And that was unheard of, to live somewhere in Miami where you work 3 miles away. And so I started working for the Everglades Foundation. They're a local not-for-profit. They're focused on environmental conservation. They are amazing. The work that they do is incredible. And I always plug the Everglades Foundation. They're doing a huge campaign right now called Your Water Comes from the Everglades. So heads
Mhm.
up, Miami and South Florida. If you did not know, the Everglades is the drinking water source for South Florida. Over
Mhm.
4 million people get their water from the Everglades, and it's extremely important for us to protect that natural resource. But I started working for the Everglades Foundation. And that really opened my eyes to not-for-profit work. And I did that for a few years. And then I decided, hey, let me give this political science degree a whirl. Like, let's just go
Mhm.
and try it out. I have a political science degree. Like, let me go work in politics. It just made sense in my brain. And I worked for a local county commissioner doing outreach for a local county commissioner. And then I went back to the nonprofit field after about a year of working in politics. I went back to the not-for-profit field for the Deering Estate Foundation, doing conservation on a historical and also environmental, because there's a huge environmental component in the Deering Estate. And it was my combination of those three roles and my community involvement, because I was very much involved with the community when I worked in outreach for a local county commissioner, as one needs to be in that role. And so it was my combination of those three things that Chamber South, when I was 28 years old, and I always say this because I was very, very, very young, and I still look back and kind of pinch myself and also question the board, but clearly they knew what they were doing. But I was 28 years old when Chamber South approached me for this position, and they were like, hey, think you'd be great for our organization. And that's how I came to be here at Chamber South. And you're right, I definitely did not grow up even knowing what a chamber of commerce was, more or less what being president and CEO of that organization
Mhm.
is. And, I will be honest, and I probably shouldn't say this. I don't wake up every single morning being like, woohoo, like local economic growth and
Mhm.
development. But
Right.
what I do wake up every morning being really excited about is the opportunity to help our community, to make a difference, to impact change, to tell the stories. Anthony, you mentioned that
Mhm.
I, could be like a reporter because I'm constantly, my LinkedIn posts are
Yep.
essays,
Yep.
they
Yep.
really
Yep. Yep.
are. It's a lot of
Yeah.
information. And
Yeah.
I truly, I mean, I know it's a lot of information. I truly feel like I'm doing a disservice if I don't give that much
Mhm.
information, because I'm not here just to take a photo with, Ron McGill and be like, hey, here's me with Ron McGill. I'm here to tell you what he's doing, all the
Mhm.
amazing work that he's doing in our community, all the amazing work that all these organizations are doing in our community. And I would be completely remiss if I didn't use my platform and my opportunity to tell the stories, because they need to be told. They're incredible. And it just, that the domino effect, or however you want to call it, of the visibility for these organizations is incredible. So I love it.
Yeah. And Brittany, for those who don't know what a chamber of commerce is, I don't think we defined it at the outset. Do you want to give that definition of a chamber of
Yes.
commerce?
Absolutely. Chamber of Commerce promotes local economic growth and development. So
Yeah.
earlier when I was like, I don't wake up every day being like, yay, local economic growth and development. I do in a
Yeah.
different way. But chambers of commerce
Mhm.
promote local economic growth and development. In other parts of the country, they serve as a major tourism driver and a major economic driver. In Miami-Dade County, our major tourism driver is the GMCVB, and our major economic driver is the Beacon Council, and our major tourism driver is the GMCVB. So Miami-Dade County is a very unique space because we actually have, well over a dozen different chambers of commerce that serve either different geographic or demographic communities. So Chamber South, for example, we serve a geographic community. Our community is South Miami, Pinecrest, Palmetto Bay, Cutler Bay, and Kendall. So we have the greater South Dade geographic community. You have other chambers of commerce like the South Florida Hispanic Chamber. They serve the Hispanic community. You have the Gay and Lesbian Chamber. They serve the gay and lesbian community. But none of these chambers are prohibitive. So you don't have to be Hispanic to be involved in South Florida Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. It just means that you want to do business with the people that are involved in that organization and that you want to help them grow. It's the same thing with Chamber South. You do not have to live or work in the geographic area that we serve. It just means that you want to connect with those companies there and you want to help them and see how they can help you and how there can be mutually beneficial opportunities.
That's very interesting, Brittany. And I think going back to your story, I think it's so amazing, and I really want to point this out. And you you mentioned that junior year, you're like, hey, maybe law isn't what I want to do. You come back to Miami and you start to follow kind of like one foot in front of the other, just starting to follow some of your passions that you really want to just explore, and volunteering and working for the Everglades Foundation and getting into the nonprofit world. I just wanted to point that out and just see, because I feel like there's so many people maybe listening to this now, and even Anthony and I, where we may not have known what we wanted to end up, or the career that we wanted to actually pursue, but we did know what we wanted to do today and tomorrow. And just putting one foot in front of the other, I think is so important. And that's such a good example that you set for so many young people like us to be able to model after that, right? Because a lot of people may be going after a degree that they think maybe looks good or maybe sounds good, or maybe pays okay. But I think a lot of what we're getting now in this generation is, hey, I want to serve our local community. Hey, I want to, create films around, the social economic, atmosphere that we're really going through right now, and just different things that people are honestly creating careers that we never even thought really existed. And I want to just congratulate you on that, because I think that's so cool, and you really definitely set the path for that. But I want to take a little bit of a right turn here, because again, as young people, you mentioned that, hey, I didn't know what a chamber of commerce would, when I was 25, 26 years old. For someone maybe like Anthony and I, people listening to this, maybe getting out of high school, even getting out of college, what benefit do you think the Chamber of Commerce could have on them? And what, mutual networking could they be able to create? And the people that they're going to be able to meet by just being a part of a community like that? What would you tell someone that's maybe getting interested into doing and being a part of a community like that?
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you, Gabe, for your comments. And yes, I do believe that there's always going to be the opportunity for you to do good. There are things that look good, but definitely being able to do good, that should always be top of mind. At least it is for me. With you, that's a great question, because you think about, people think that chambers of commerce are very traditional, somewhat older modeled organizations, and we're trying to break that stigma. And I think, one of the things, like being such a young CEO of a chamber South at least attracts a younger crowd. So kind of what benefits are there? Like why would someone even a college student or someone fresh out of college, want to connect with the chamber? Well, a couple of different ways, or a couple of different reasons. Everyone thinks of Miami. Well, first and foremost, people that think of Miami don't know anything about Miami because they're just thinking of the city of Miami, and it's Miami-Dade County. So when you think, I always say it's Miami-Dade County because city of Miami is very small. It's a very small part of Miami-Dade County. So when you think about Miami-Dade County, it can be overwhelming. You're like, this huge. I mean, there is a statistic. I just keep throwing out numbers. Fact check me, please. But there is a statistic that I think that Miami-Dade County has a larger population than some states in the United States. So just our county alone has more residents and a larger population than an entire state in the United States. I think it's 17, but don't quote me on that. And so you think of it as it's a huge place. But when you start getting involved and you start getting involved with local organizations and you start getting involved with your Chamber of Commerce and you start knowing who your elected officials are, you start knowing who the community is, it's a very small place. Like Miami could be a very small, intimate, tight-knit community if you know the right organizations to be involved with. And your chamber, if I can give you one word to describe a Chamber of Commerce, it is a connector. So if you want to really put down roots and get to know your community, get to know the people that are making a difference, get to know the people that are making decisions, get to know the movers and shakers, get to know the and influencers. And I don't say influencers on the social media side. I mean like the actual people who are in these seats making the decisions, the elected officials. Join your Chamber of Commerce, join a Chamber of Commerce, because they will help connect you to your greater community. And then you talk about not knowing what you want to do, like not necessarily knowing what path you want to take. Being a part of a Chamber of Commerce, of a business organization, you're going to be exposed to so many different things that you may not even knew existed. And so I want to do this a lot where I talk about like career exploration, because I didn't know that I could grow up and be a president of a Chamber of Commerce, and someone might come to an event and might meet me or connect with me at a chamber event and be like, wow, this is really cool. Like I want to aspire to do that. Or I want to, go be a vice president of development for a not-for-profit organization. And there are jobs that you could literally go out there and raise money for the cause or the organization that you're passionate about. I mean, like what better way to wake up every single day than knowing that you're going to work and that you're raising money for something that you're so passionate about. And that's your job. That's what you get paid to do. And I don't think a lot of people know that. So it connects you to your community and exposes you to an entirely new world that you didn't even know existed. And the younger that you can get involved with that, like fresh out of college, that is the perfect time, especially if you're looking to put roots down. And if you're not from Miami, join your Chamber of Commerce, because that can help you connect to your local community.
Brittnie, I can't agree with you more. And I'm a living example of what you're talking about, you as well. Like I don't know if you would consider LBA, Land Builders Association, as a Chamber of Commerce. Definitely
it's an
a similar
association.
vibe.
No, it's an association group. So it's a networking group. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so I'm a member of LBA and have been throughout college, even when I was still at Miami-Dade College, back in Miami. Right now I'm at UF, and I'm telling you, I mean, the doors that have opened for me, seriously, the doors that have opened for me just because I'm in the right room. And that's 50. And we tell people, Brittnie, on the podcast, Gabe and I, we tell people on the podcast, like, look, 50% of the work is just being in the right room. Then the other 50% is actually getting it done, right? So you can go to these chambers and sit in the corner. You did 50% of the work, but you didn't execute on the other 50. You're not going to get much. But if you don't even go in the first place to these events, to these tables where decisions are being made, you get nothing as well. So it's a two-part equation, in my opinion, of first getting in the room and then executing once you're there. And I've done it, and I'm still perfecting, but I've done a pretty good job of doing that at a very young age. I mean, I go to these LBA events, and I am always the youngest person there, and I'm 21, which is still pretty young, but I would love to see, maybe it's like seniors in high school or at least freshmen or sophomores in college go. And I think we're getting there. And I think, Brittnie, you're at the forefront of that, of bringing young people like us or even younger into these rooms that can be a little intimidating, definitely. But I, tip my hat to you, because you're kind of breaking that barrier or that stigma, even, if you will, that it's usually for older folks, that you have to be very, professional. And that's the majority of people. But, there's still room for a lot of young folks. And I'll end with this, is that I really have noticed that a lot of, if not the majority of people in these rooms, Brittnie, of very, high level executives and business owners, even politicians, they really, really like being around young people. I've noticed that they like it because they're kind of thinking of their legacy, right? Chairman Pepe Diaz, who's a great friend of mine for the Miami-Dade County Commission, he really likes hanging around me when at these events, and has offered to meet with me at my office in Miami and elsewhere, because he kind of sees potential in young people, not just myself. So these people are actually very welcoming, more welcoming than I could have ever imagined going into LBA and other organizations. They really like seeing young blood, young energy, because they're already thinking of, okay, I'm going to be out of the game pretty soon. Who can I mentor? Who can I still be in the game with a little bit longer? And that's why young folks are so important to these organizations. And again, thank you for what you're doing for all of us.
Yeah, Anthony, if I could just say, I have three things that I want to say, because I'm like listening to you and I'm like, oh my God, this is so great.
Yeah.
So the first thing, I hate when people are like, oh, you're so lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And because like you said, there's work that goes into it. And so I think the best way is luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So
Mm.
always keep that in
Mm-hmm.
mind. Like, yes, you could be in the right place at the right time, like you said, Anthony, but if you don't take advantage of that opportunity of being in
Yeah.
the right place in the right time and you're sitting off in the corner, you're
Yes.
not, your preparation, your opportunity are not going to line up in that lucky sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then yes, absolutely. Leaders are definitely, I'll tell you, like if I walk into a room and I see someone younger than me, I gravitate towards them because I'm like, wow, you remind me of myself at that age. And I don't know if it's like an ego thing or whatever the case may be, but you want to mentor, you want to pass that along, you want to encourage it. And so you're 100% right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final thing I'll tell you is, this is my favorite chamber story ever. And I honestly, you kind of like unlocked a core memory when you were talking. But favorite chamber story ever. I'm here at my Chamber South office. We're here in South Miami. Don't necessarily get a lot of walk-through traffic, although I do have members come by and drop off, goodies and sweet things to munch on, and it's a problem. So please, thank you. I love you guys so much, but we're trying to be healthy.
Yeah.
And so I had this young gentleman walk into my office one day, and he was like, "Hey, is this a Chamber of Commerce? I want to get more information." He was in college, and I was absolutely. So I brought him into my office. Thankfully I was here, and I brought him in, and I had some time, and I sat down with him, and I talked, and I was like, "Hey, why do you want to get involved with the Chamber of Commerce? Like, you're young, you're in college." He's like, "Well, I went to a talk, and the speaker recommended to research your local Chamber of Commerce and get involved." And that's what the speaker told the audience, and he listened. So a few days later, he walks into my office. So I'm like, "Yeah, let's get you signed up." We have a rate, a chamber, because it is a membership, right? You do have to pay, unfortunately. There's a business part of this somewhere in there. But we have a membership for students or for individuals. It's $100 a year. I mean, it's an investment in yourself. Really, that's not going to make or break Chamber South whether you pay me $100 a year or not. So it's really an investment in yourself, but that's our rate for students and for individuals. So he joined as an individual, and he started coming to some networking events, and he was really interested in the finance arena, and he had a podcast. He did all these amazing things. I mean, what a go-getter, right? Young kid. I was honestly really nervous because I was like, "Can you we serve alcohol at some of our events?" I'm like, "Oh my God, this is going to stress me out." But he was great. He was amazing. Well, fast forward less than 3 months, one of my members, one of my finance banking members, they had zeroed in on this kid. I say kid, this young gentleman, and offered him a job. They'd seen his commitment, they'd seen his drive, they'd seen his ambition, they'd seen his potential, and they offered him a job. So huge win for him and for them. Unfortunately, he could no longer be engaged with the chamber because now he's off working a full-time job, and he has all of these additional responsibilities while still going to school. But that, Gabe, to answer your earlier question, that's kind of what a chamber can do. And that's why we're here. And I love being able to do that. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I think that's really part of the reason why Anthony and I started the Mindset Podcast to begin with, right? Because like I mentioned earlier, we always like to tell our listeners, when you don't know what you want to do or what the end goal, just do what you can do. Just do what you know you can do, and that is getting signed up with your local chamber. That is starting a podcast and having local leaders and influencers, and having those conversations. I think there's so many people that are looking for answers, and they look into all these different resources, but they might be intimidated by some of these organizations because they're very formal, luncheon, black suit and tie type of thing. And we really want to kind of break the stigma, much like you, because we have our own events where we can invite people like you, other local influencers and local leaders, to have just hey, crack open a beer, let's see what you got, like let's talk chop and just get to know each other. I think there's so much value in that. And I think the way our society is really steering it is the, us 21, 22, 25, even young, entrepreneurs and business people in college, like you mentioned, the example that you just told us, they really are not only the future, but they're the now. Right. And I think there's so much that we can be investing in that. And I think that, Chamber South is doing such a great job, and having you as their CEO and president is really leading the way and setting such a great example. But I do want to ask you, and I think you might have some stories on this too. Maybe could you give us a little bit of, what is it like? What are some of the challenges that you faced being in your position, right? I know, at the end of the day, like you mentioned, it is a business, it is an organization. There are responsibilities. It's not all events, not all fun and games. There are things that need to be done. But what are some of the challenges that you've faced, maybe along your journey, or maybe in the position that you've been in now as a leader of this organization? Could you just give us a little bit of insight on some of that, to kind of just give us, some background on what it is to be on the inside of Chamber South?
Well, I mean, with the chamber itself, so there's me personally, and then there's the chamber. So with the chamber itself, Chamber has been around for over 90 years. Over 90 years. A lot of people don't know that Chamber South is one of the oldest chambers in Miami-Dade. And so you don't have an organization that old without, kind of a roller coaster ride. There's been some ups, there's been some downs. And I think for a really long time, Chamber South struggled with its identity and struggle with who we are. When I say we, the organization Chamber South, who we are, what we do, and who we serve. And I think for a really long time, Chamber South was trying to be something that we weren't. We were aspiring, rightfully so. You kind of look up to your heroes and you think, oh my God, I want to aspire to be like some of these other amazing organizations here in Miami-Dade. And you lose the essence of who you are if you try too hard, and there is, like I said, there's over a dozen chambers of commerce in Miami-Dade County. So there is something that you have to make yourself unique in order to be able to stand out. And so really Chamber South, our sort of unique, our thing that makes us different is that we are we're a very cozy, family oriented chamber of commerce. And that's what I like to call it. I feel bad because I genuinely think that I'm doing a disservice to my colleagues at other chambers of commerce, but I make myself really accessible. And I think that's really important. If you call the office, you can get me on the phone. My cell phone number is on all my business cards. Like, people walk in, and I'm not going to make you meet with, my membership person or my marketing person. You're going to come in and you're going to sit with me, and I'm going to personally walk you through what it is that you need to do. And I think that's really important. But for a long time, Chamber South didn't have that. They didn't have that connection to the members, connection to the communities. And that's what kind of makes us different. So that's a challenge that we face, that we've sort of overcome. Myself as a leader, I can just tell you, just from my entire career, I've always been in leadership positions at a very young age. So being young and telling people older than you what to do is very difficult. And getting the respect from those people who are older, and they're older, so they think they have more experience or they know better, and that's always hard to kind of navigate when you're a young leader and you have to kind of give direction to someone who's older than you. So I'm young, I'm a woman, so that's another thing. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. I know it's 2022, but listen, these things still exist, and we're fortunate in Miami-Dade that it doesn't exist that much. But if you do a lot, there's a picture on my LinkedIn of me with the other chamber presidents in Miami-Dade County, and I'm very different. I'm young, I'm a woman, I'm a minority. And so I faced those struggles throughout my career as a leader. That's just been, sort of across the board. But, with every day, I get a little bit less young, and that's okay. And we're moving forward as a community, and we're moving forward as a society in terms of being more accepting of younger leaders, female leaders, minority leaders. Our community is evolving, and we're very fortunate that we live in Miami-Dade. So those things have become less and less of a challenge as I've progressed through my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, Brittnie, all these challenges that you faced, all these obstacles that you've endured, have really made you the kind of leader that you are now. So, what is what would you say? What is the most important leadership trait a leader should have based on your experience?
Empathy.
Hmm.
100%. I think that you really need to understand the people around you and be able to relate to them. I I have always said, I with kids, if I were to ever have kids, I've always said I want to remember what it's like when I was a teenager and how I felt when I was a teenager and I thought my parents were being completely ridiculous and like, whatever the case may be, like I just thought they were being so unfair, whatever, and just remember how I felt when I was a teenager so that when I'm a parent, I can relate to teenagers and how they think. And I genuinely always try to remember the way that I felt when I was an
Mm,
employee, when I was reporting to a boss. And so now that I am a leader, now that I do have a team, I try to really be
mhm,
really empathetic. I always try to put myself in their shoes. Like how would I have felt, a few years
mm,
ago if this was being told to me? And I think empathy across the board, whether it's with your team, whether it's with your clients or your customers, in my case, my members or the community at large, being really empathetic, it could never hurt because you always have to
mm,
remember that everyone, be kinder than necessary because everyone's fighting some sort of battle that you don't know. And so I think being
mhm.
empathetic and being able to relate can go a really long way as a leader.
Yeah, and personally, Brittany, I'm sure you get this quite often. But one of the things that I admire about you is your vibrant energy. You're seemingly always willing to help kind of vibes that you give off. A lot to what you just said a few minutes ago, that something, and I agree 100% that differentiates you and other folks and leaders in our community is that you're really there. You're there. You're shaking hands. You're meeting. You don't just kind of, oh yeah, call this person instead. You're really there to help. And I think that's what someone in your position should do, and you're doing that, which unfortunately is not very common. But nonetheless, you're doing that, and people are watching. And this is one of the reasons why we want to bring you on the podcast, so that our listeners can be exposed to you, and hopefully they can either join the chamber or just see you around the community, maybe meet up with you, or just learn about your story, because it's so inspiring, the challenges that you face, and that's what makes, I think, life a little bit more interesting and a little bit more fun and vibrant. So thank you really for your leadership on behalf of Gabe and myself. Thank you for doing what you do as a young person. It's good to see another young person leading the way for us, who hopefully will do the same for younger people behind us. So Brittany, thank you again for joining us and for sharing your wisdom with us. Before you leave, where can our listeners find you if they want to contact you? I know LinkedIn for sure, but Instagram, LinkedIn,
LinkedIn.
Facebook, how can they get in contact with you?
LinkedIn, absolutely.
Yeah,
My name, I mean, I'm sure it's probably published on something, but Brittnie Bassant. So just
yeah.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm very Googleable. I don't even know if that's a word, but
Yeah, there
find
you
me
go.
on Google. I mean, by all
Mm,
means, reach out to me on social media, LinkedIn,
awesome.
or Instagram. But also just go ahead and give us a call at the office, 305-661-1621. That's our office line. Just go
Mm,
ahead and ask for me. If I'm not here, the message will be given. And then you can reach out to Chamber South. You can go to our website,
yeah.
chambersouth.com, or you can email us. You can email me directly, B Bassant, so my first initial last name, at chambersouth.com, or you could just email info if that's easier for you to remember,
Mhm.
info at chambersouth.com, and I'll still get that email too because I monitor all of them. So I
Boom.
don't miss anything.
Boom. There you go. And I might add, you are very fast at replying back. So that's another plus for you that is not very common. So there you have it all. Brittany Bassant, thank you so much for joining us. Mindset out.